She kissed a stranger at the festival, unaware he was the Alpha King who had been searching for her. Lanterns floated on gentle breezes, carrying the soft glow of magic that only Erendor possessed. Tonight, the city celebrated the Festival of the Moon, a night when the boundaries between the mortal world and the unseen forces of the land seemed thinner, when music, laughter, and whispers of magic filled the air. Ilara weaved through the crowd with a small basket of festival sweets. Her hair, dark as the night itself, spilled over her shoulders, catching the light of lanterns as she moved. She was not of noble blood, but she carried herself with a quiet dignity, her eyes alive with curiosity and something deeper she did not yet understand. Ever since she was a child, she had felt drawn to the mysteries of the kingdom, as though some invisible thread pulled her toward places she could not explain. The streets were alive. Children ran between stalls, their laughter like chimes. Merchants called out, offering sweetmeats and charms. Dancers in bright silks twirled, their movements reflecting in the eyes of those who watched. Yet beneath the laughter, there was something darker, a hum in the air that made Ilara's heart skip. Magic was near tonight, she could feel it. She stopped near a fountain where water shimmered silver under the lantern light. There, a man stood alone, watching the festival with eyes as dark as midnight. His presence was commanding, though subtle. Something in the way he carried himself made the crowd part slightly, as if they knew he belonged to a higher order. He wore a mask, black and adorned with silver patterns that mirrored the constellations above. Ilara's breath caught. The stranger's gaze met hers for a moment that felt longer than it should. A shiver ran down her spine. There was recognition in his eyes, though she did not know him. It was a pull she could not resist, a magnetic force that drew her closer. Without thinking, she stepped toward him. "The festival, it's beautiful tonight," she said, her voice softer than the music around them. The man inclined his head slightly, his expression hidden behind the mask, but something in his stance was like a blade sheathed, waiting. "It is," he said, his voice deep, smooth, and strange. "But some beauty is fleeting, isn't it?" Ilara frowned. There was something almost mournful in the way he spoke. The festival seemed distant now, its colors dull compared to the intensity in his eyes. For reasons she could not name, she felt exposed, as if he could see into her very soul. The music swelled nearby and people began to dance, hands joined and smiles wide. The stranger held out his hand. "Dance with me," he said, and the words, simple as they were, carried a weight that made her heartbeat quicken. Her friends were nowhere in sight. The crowd seemed to fade as she took his hand, letting him lead her into the dance. His movements were controlled, precise, yet there was a fire behind them, a rhythm that matched the storm she felt inside. She could not explain why she felt both safe and terrified in his presence. As they danced, the world around them blurred. Lanterns glowed like stars, laughter became a distant echo, and all that remained was him and her, spinning in a circle of light and shadow. She laughed lightly, a sound she barely recognized as hers. You move like you've danced 100 times before," she said. "I have," he replied, and the hint of a smile curved under his mask. "And yet I have never danced like this." His words were strange, as though they carried a meaning she could not yet grasp. The music slowed, a haunting melody taking its place. He leaned closer, and she could feel the warmth of him through the fabric that separated them. Time seemed to stop. Her heart pounded so fiercely she thought he could hear it. Without thinking, carried away by a force she did not understand, Ilara pressed her lips to his. It was quick, fleeting, yet it set something deep inside her alight. The stranger's hand tightened around hers, his other hand brushing lightly against her back. For a moment she felt the world tilt, spinning in a way that was dizzying and yet exhilarating. She pulled back slightly, her eyes searching his. And then he was gone. One moment the festival still danced around her, vibrant and bright. The next he had vanished into the crowd, leaving only the ghost of warmth where he had stood. Her chest heaved as she tried to catch her breath, her mind racing. Who was he? Why did her body feel as if it had been struck by lightning? Her instincts whispered danger, yet her heart rebelled. There was something in him, something powerful, dangerous, yet familiar. She could not explain why tears pricked her eyes. She had kissed a stranger, and yet it felt like destiny. She turned in a circle, scanning the crowd for any trace of him. The festival continued unabated around her, people unaware of the storm that had erupted in her chest. She asked a vendor nearby if he had seen the masked man, but they shook their heads, busy with their work. Alara's hands shook as she clutched her basket. A voice inside her whispered that this stranger was no ordinary man. Something about the way he had moved, spoken, and even vanished suggested magic, power, and secrets she was only beginning to understand. By the edge of the fountain, she sank onto the stone, letting the night wash over her. Lanterns reflected in the water like broken stars, each one trembling as if alive. She remembered the depth in his eyes, the strength of his presence, the way the air had seemed to hum between them. She could not forget him. She did not know his name. She did not know who he was. But somehow she knew she would see him again. Across the festival, Kale walked through the crowd, hidden in plain sight. His mask concealed his features, but his gaze lingered on her as long as he could. He knew the risks of revealing himself, yet every instinct in him screamed that she belonged in his life. Not as a pawn, not as a subject of prophecy, but as the woman who had stirred something ancient in him, something even he could not name. Yet he could not approach, not yet. Forces were moving against them both. Shadows long forgotten had begun to stir in Erendor, and the safety he could offer was not guaranteed. He would have to wait, watch, and protect from afar, until the time was right. Meanwhile, Ilara rose from the fountain, brushing her hands over her dress, trying to shake off the spell of the encounter. But the memory of the stranger lingered, electric and alive, like a spark that refused to die. She could not understand why, but she felt marked, as though a thread had tied her fate to his the instant their lips met. The festival continued, lanterns drifting into the night, laughter echoing through the streets, music rising and falling like the tide. Yet for Ilara, everything had shifted. Nothing would ever feel the same. She walked through the crowd, searching, hoping, unaware that the man she had kissed was no ordinary stranger, but the Alpha King of Erendor, a ruler whose shadow stretched across the kingdom, a man who had spent years seeking her, drawn to her by prophecy, destiny, and a bond that neither of them fully understood. And somewhere in the darkened alleys and high towers of the city, Kale watched, unseen, knowing the first move had been made. Their fates had entwined, and now the game of destiny and desire had begun. The night whispered secrets in a language she did not yet understand, and as she wandered through the festival, she felt the pull of something greater, a force that would demand courage, trust, and perhaps love. She did not yet know that the kiss she had shared would change everything, her life, her heart, and the fate of the kingdom itself. Somewhere beyond the lanterns, in the shadows where the wind carried whispers, Kale's eyes burned with a fire he could not hide. The search had ended, yet it had only just begun. And for Ilara, the stranger in the festival would remain a question that haunted her, like a dream half-remembered, a longing she could not yet name, but one that would not release its hold so easily. The morning after the Festival of the Moon, the streets of Erendor were quiet, bathed in soft sunlight that did little to chase away the lingering shadows from the night before. Lanterns, now unlit, swayed gently on their chains, and the air smelled of dust, bread, and faint traces of magic. Ilara walked through the city's winding streets, her basket empty, her mind filled with the memory of a stranger's lips pressed to hers. She could not shake the feeling that someone, or something, was watching her, yet when she looked around, there was only the normal bustle of townspeople beginning their day. Her heart still raced at the thought of him. Who was he? Why did his presence feel like a storm and a sanctuary all at once? She knew that what had happened at the festival was impossible to forget. Every step she took seemed to echo with the memory of that moment. She passed a quiet alley, and suddenly, a shadow fell across her path. Her chest tightened. From the darkness, a man stepped forward and she froze. There he was, the stranger from the festival, the man who had haunted her dreams the night before. "Ilara," he said, his voice low, commanding, and impossibly familiar. "I have been searching for you." Her breath caught. She had never heard him speak her name before, yet it fell from his lips as if it had always belonged there. She wanted to speak, to ask who he was, but her tongue felt heavy, and all she could do was stare. "My name is Kale," he continued, lowering the hood that shadowed his features. The mask from the festival was gone, revealing sharp, commanding features softened only by the faintest trace of something vulnerable in his eyes. "I am the Alpha King of Urendor." The word struck her like a blade. The Alpha King, he was the ruler of all she had ever known in this kingdom, a man of power, feared and respected, whose name was whispered in awe. And he had been looking for her, for her. Kale studied her silently, as though weighing every heartbeat, every reaction. "You do not yet understand why I have sought you," he said, his tone steady but urgent. "There are forces in this kingdom that are rising again, dark forces that can consume everything. You are the key." Ilara's mind spun. "The key? I don't understand, I'm just me. I'm not anyone important." "You are more than you know," Kale said, stepping closer. The air around him seemed to hum with power, and though she felt fear, there was also an irresistible pull. "Your magic, your bloodline, it is tied to the fate of this kingdom. Without you, darkness will prevail." Her legs trembled. Magic, fate, darkness. It all sounded impossible, yet she could feel it deep in her chest, a strange warmth spreading like fire. Memories of the festival, of his touch, of that fleeting kiss, returned stronger and more urgent than ever. Something within her stirred. Kale held out his hand. "Come with me, you cannot face this alone." Ilara hesitated. Everything in her screamed to run, to hide in the comfort of what she knew. Yet a voice inside whispered that she had no choice. Something in Kale's eyes promised both danger and protection, and somehow she believed him. She placed her hand in his, feeling the warmth of his skin, the quiet strength that radiated from him. The streets seemed to shift around them as they walked, the city fading into shadows. Kale led her to the edge of the capital, to the obsidian spires of his fortress, a place that seemed to drink the light from the sky. The gates opened before them as if they had always been waiting. Inside, the halls were vast and silent, echoing with memories and secrets that belonged to no one alive but him. "Why me?" Ilara asked again, her voice trembling as they walked through the halls. "Why am I so important?" Kale's gaze softened. "Because you are strong. You have the blood of the old line, those who could control magic, who could protect the kingdom. And because I have searched for you for years, even before I knew your face, even before I knew your name." Her heart skipped a beat. His words were gentle yet heavy with meaning. "Years," she whispered. You don't even know me. How could you have known me?" "I knew you in dreams," Kale said. "In shadows, in visions. The moment you were born, I felt the pull of your presence. And when I saw you at the festival," his eyes darkened. "I knew the search was over, but there is no time for hesitation. The darkness is awakening, and it will not wait for us to be ready." Ilara swallowed, her hands trembling. Magic had never been part of her life, or at least she had never been aware of it. And now, Kale claimed that it was hers, that it was powerful enough to fight an ancient threat. She felt fear clawing at her chest, but also a strange excitement. She wanted to believe him, to believe in the impossible. Kale stopped in a quiet chamber, a room lined with books, scrolls, and strange artifacts that pulsed faintly with power. "This is your beginning," he said. "Here, you will learn to understand who you are. Here, you will learn to control what has always been inside you. And here, you will discover why you are connected to me." Alara stepped inside, looking around. Every object seemed to hum with a strange energy, and she could feel it prickling at her fingertips, stirring something deep within. "Teach me," she said, her voice firm despite the fear twisting inside her. "I want to understand." Kale nodded, his expression unreadable. "Very well, but understand this. Learning is only the first step. You will be tested not just by your powers, but by the choices you make, by the strength of your heart." Over the next days, Kale guided her through exercises she barely understood at first. She felt sparks of energy as she focused, as though invisible threads connected her to the world around her. She could feel the life of the fortress itself, the pulse of the city outside, and the faint echoes of things long forgotten. At night he would watch her quietly, never interfering unless necessary. There was tension in every glance, every moment they shared. His nearness was intoxicating, terrifying, and impossible to ignore. And in her heart she felt that strange pull, the one that had drawn her to him at the festival, pulling stronger with every lesson, every shared glance, every moment of quiet silence. Yet not all lessons were gentle. One evening, while practicing in a secluded courtyard, shadows rose from the corners of the fortress, dark and formless. They moved like living things, whispering threats that made Alara's blood run cold. She faltered, unsure of how to fight them. Kale stepped forward, placing a steadying hand on her shoulder. "Focus," he said softly but firmly. "You are stronger than this. You have the blood of the protectors. Trust yourself. Trust me." The shadows hissed and lunged, but under his guidance, Alara found a spark of power within her. A wave of light burst from her hands, and the shadows recoiled, fading into nothingness. She collapsed onto the ground, gasping for breath, and Kale knelt beside her, his expression unreadable. "You did well," he said finally, his voice soft but intense. "Better than I expected, but this is only the beginning. There will be darker things than these, and they will come for you and for the kingdom." Her hands shook and she looked up at him, the intensity in his eyes burning into her soul. I don't know if I can do this," she whispered. Kale's hand brushed hers gently. "You can. And you will, because you are not alone. I will be with you, always." She wanted to believe him. She wanted to feel safe in his words. Yet deep in her heart, a shadow of doubt remained. Could she really be strong enough? Could she survive what was coming? That night, as the moon rose high over the fortress, Alara stood by a window, looking at the city below. Lanterns flickered like tiny stars, and somewhere in the streets, life continued, unaware of the magic and danger rising in the kingdom. Her thoughts wandered to the stranger she had kissed at the festival, the man she now knew as Kale, the Alpha King. The memory of his lips, his touch, the way he had looked at her, haunted her. And though fear filled her chest, so did a strange warmth. Kale watched her from the shadows of the room, silent and unseen. He had brought her here, hidden her, trained her, yet the intensity of his own feelings for her was a storm he could not contain. Desire, protectiveness, and a deep, abiding need to keep her safe pressed against the walls of his control. He could not allow himself to act on it, yet he could not stop the pull either. In that moment, both of them felt the weight of what was coming. Darkness was rising, magic was awakening, and their fates were bound together more tightly than either could yet understand. And as the first hint of danger stirred in the kingdom's shadowed corners, both realized that the festival kiss was only the beginning. It was a spark that would either ignite their power or consume them entirely. The forest outside Urindor was unlike anything Alara had ever seen. Trees rose like blackened towers, their twisted branches forming a canopy so thick that sunlight barely reached the ground. Mist clung to the roots and fallen leaves, curling like smoke around her ankles. The air smelled of earth, rain, and something older, older than the kingdom itself. It was here, Kale told her, that she would confront the truths of her lineage, face the curse that threatened them both, and awaken the strength she had only glimpsed in the fortress. Alara's heart pounded in her chest. She had trained under Kale's watchful eyes for days, learning to control her magic to focus her energy. But the forest was different. The power here was wild, untamed, and it seemed to watch her, testing her with every step. Shadows shifted at the edge of her vision, whispering secrets she could not understand. "You must trust yourself," Kale said from behind her, his voice low, steady, carrying the weight of command and something softer, something that made her heart ache. "And you must trust me." Alara turned to face him. The morning light, dim as it was, caught in his dark hair and sharp features. His presence was like a shield, grounding her in a world that suddenly felt uncertain and dangerous. And yet the moment she looked at him, a tension sparked between them, one she could not name, one that had been growing since the festival. "I'm afraid," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "What if I fail? What if I'm not strong enough?" Kale stepped closer, his gaze intense. "You are stronger than you know. Fear is only a shadow. You must step into the light even if your legs tremble." He paused, studying her. "And Alara, you are not alone in this. Remember that." The forest seemed to respond to her fear, shadows deepening, wind whispering warnings. Alara drew a shaky breath and closed her eyes, feeling the power within her stir. She focused on the pulse she had learned to feel in the fortress, the connection to life around her, the magic that had always been her birthright. A flash of movement startled her. Shadows coalesced into forms, dark and twisted, whispering in voices that were not quite human. They surged toward her, a tide of darkness that seemed to feed on fear itself. Kale moved instantly, standing between her and the shadows. "Focus," he commanded. His hand brushed against hers, a brief contact that sent a jolt of warmth through her. The touch was grounding, reminding her that she was not facing this alone. Alara reached out with her energy, the same light she had conjured in the fortress, and a wave of power erupted from her hands. The shadows hissed and recoiled, scattering into the mist. She fell to her knees, breathing hard, her chest heaving, and Kale knelt beside her. "You did well," he said, his voice softening. "But there will be more, stronger, darker. You must learn to control it, not just react to it." Alara looked at him, the tension between them almost unbearable. The memory of the festival kiss, the closeness in the fortress, and the brush of his hand just now all collided in her mind. She wanted to reach for him, to say something she didn't yet understand, but words failed her. For hours, they walked through the forest. Kale taught her to sense the magic in the air, to feel the threads of energy that bound the trees, the wind, and even the shadows themselves. He showed her how to weave her power into the environment, how to draw strength from the land instead of fighting it. With every step, every lesson, the bond between them grew, not just of teacher and student, but of something deeper, unspoken, and undeniable. Night fell and the forest seemed to hold its breath. The moon rose pale and cold, casting silver light through the canopy. Kale set up a small camp, a circle of protective wards surrounding them. Alara sat across from him, her hands trembling from exhaustion and from the thrill of what she was learning. "You have come far," Kale said quietly, as he watched the firelight dance across her face. "But the forest will test more than your magic. It will test your heart." Alara's stomach tightened. "My heart?" Kale nodded. "Yes, there are visions here, memories of those who came before you. You will see truths that may frighten you, truths about your lineage, about the curse that binds you and me. You may question everything you believe, everything you are, but it is necessary." She shivered, both from the cool night air and from the weight of his words. "I don't know if I can face it," she whispered. "You can," Kale said firmly, "because I will be with you. But you must step forward willingly. You must open yourself to what the forest will show you, no matter how dark." With a deep breath, Alara agreed. She closed her eyes, letting the sounds of the forest fill her mind. The rustling leaves, the distant cries of unseen creatures, the hum of magic that pulsed through the ground beneath her. And then slowly, the shadows around the camp began to move, coalescing into shapes that she recognized. not as enemies but as echoes of the past. Visions appeared in her mind, vivid and impossible. She saw kings and queens, cloaked in darkness and light, struggling with power and betrayal. She saw Kale's ancestors, their eyes heavy with regret and sorrow, bound by a curse that had passed through generations. And then she saw herself, her parents, her own earliest memories, tinged with magic she had not understood. Tears slipped down her cheeks as the weight of it all pressed on her. I didn't know," she whispered. "I didn't know any of this." Kale knelt beside her, his hand resting gently on her shoulder. "You were never meant to know alone," he said. "This curse, it has haunted me my entire life, and now it is tied to you, but together we can break it." The forest grew still as if listening. The wind ceased its whispering. Even the shadows seemed to pause, waiting. Alara could feel the magnitude of what he said, the gravity of their intertwined fates. And in that silence she felt something else, a bond deeper than fear or power, a connection that neither time nor destiny could undo. "Kale," she said softly, her voice trembling, I don't know how to be this person, strong, powerful, needed. I'm just me." "You are enough," he said, his eyes locking onto hers. "You have always been enough. The strength you seek is not separate from yourself, it is within you, and I will help you find it." For a moment the world seemed to hold its breath. Alara felt the pull between them, electric and undeniable. She wanted to reach for him, to feel the comfort of his presence, to lean into the trust and warmth that radiated from him. But she also feared the intensity of her own feelings, the power of the bond that was forming in this cursed forest. Suddenly, a scream pierced the night, sharp and terrible, echoing through the trees. Shadows twisted violently, rushing toward them from all sides. Alara instinctively raised her hands, releasing a wave of light that sent the dark forms scattering. Kale was immediately at her side, placing a protective hand on her back, guiding her, steadying her. "This is only the beginning," he said, his voice tense. "The curse will not reveal itself easily. You must be ready for what comes next." Alara nodded, breathless, her chest pounding. I will be ready," she said, though doubt still lingered. She could feel the power growing inside her, but she did not yet understand the cost of using it, the weight of what destiny demanded. Kale's gaze softened for a brief moment, and he reached out, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "Do not fear what you feel for me," he said quietly. "The bond between us, it is part of what will save you, part of what will save us both." Her heart leapt and she could not speak. The forest seemed to hum around them, alive with magic and secrets, as though it acknowledged the truth of his words. And for the first time, Alara realized that the festival kiss, the stranger's lips, was no accident. It had been destiny pulling them together, binding them before they even understood it. But the forest was not done. From the shadows, a figure emerged, cloaked in darkness, its face hidden beneath a hood. Magic surged from it, a deep, ancient power that pressed against Alara's mind, forcing fear and doubt into her heart. Kale stepped in front of her, his presence shielding her, yet even he seemed cautious. "You are here," the figure hissed, voice echoing like wind through a tomb. "And the curse will awaken because of her." Alara swallowed hard. This was real. The forest, the shadows, the visions, all of it was real. And now, she and Kale were facing something far greater than either of them had imagined. Kale's hand found hers, gripping it tightly. "No matter what happens," he said, "we face it together, always." Alara nodded, drawing courage from his words, from the bond between them, from the magic that surged within her. The forest seemed to lean in, listening, waiting for the next move in a game that had begun long before she was born. And as the hooded figure advanced, dark power radiating from it like a storm, Alara knew that the next moments would define everything: her life, the kingdom, and the bond between her and Kale. The throne room of Urendor had never looked so different. Shadows stretched across the obsidian floors, twisting with every flicker of torchlight, making the grand hall feel alive. almost sentient. The air was thick with the hum of magic, a pulse that vibrated through the stone walls and into the very hearts of those who stood within. Outside, the city was in chaos. Rumors of dark forces moving through the kingdom had spread like wildfire, and whispers of rebellion, sorcery, and curses filled the streets. Alara stood at the center of the throne room, her hands trembling as she felt the raw power coursing through her. She had grown so much in the forest, guided by Kale, yet the stakes now were higher than anything she had faced. The hooded figure from the cursed forest had returned, and with it, the full weight of the ancient curse threatened to consume not just her, but the kingdom itself. Kale stood beside her, his presence both a shield and a source of strength. His dark eyes scanned the room, calculating, commanding, yet soft whenever they fell on her. "Alara," he said quietly, "trust yourself. You are ready. I know it even if you do not." Her breath hitched. Ready. She had faced shadows, controlled her magic, and fought fear itself, but this felt different. The curse pulsed like a heartbeat, alive and relentless, and she knew that failure was not an option. I will try," she said, gripping the pendant that hung around her neck, a relic of her lineage. It thrummed with power, and she could feel the connection to her ancestors, the ones who had fought to protect this kingdom, the ones who had failed before her. Kale nodded, stepping forward, his armor clinking softly as he moved. "We will try together," he said. The words were simple, yet heavy with meaning. He had trained her, guided her, and now in this room where destiny and danger collided, he would fight beside her as both king and protector. The hooded figure stepped forward, the shadows around it twisting like living snakes. "You are too late," it hissed. "The curse cannot be broken. She is not ready, and neither of you can stop what is coming." Alara swallowed hard, yet she felt something deeper stir within her. Kale's hand brushed against hers, grounding her, reminding her that she was not alone. She raised her hands, and the energy she had been learning to control for months surged outward, filling the room with a soft, golden light. "You are wrong," she said, her voice stronger than she expected. "I am ready. We are ready." The hooded figure laughed, a hollow, chilling sound that echoed off the stone walls. Shadows surged forward, dark and formless, attempting to choke the light from the room. Alara's heart raced, but she did not hesitate. She focused, drawing strength from the forest, from Kale, from the magic that had always been part of her bloodline. The golden light burst outward in a wave, pushing back the shadows, forcing them to recoil. The figure staggered, its cloak rippling as though buffeted by invisible winds. "Impossible," it whispered, its voice shaking. "She cannot control it." "You underestimate her," Kale said, stepping beside her, drawing his own energy into the fight. The room pulsed with the combined force of their magic, a radiant force of light and shadow, power and courage, heart and mind. Alara felt herself rising above fear, above doubt. She was no longer the girl who had wandered through the festival, unaware of her destiny. She was the descendant of those who had protected Urindor for centuries, and the bond she had formed, the bond with Kale, the bond with the magic of the land, gave her the strength to face what had once seemed impossible. The hooded figure lunged forward, wielding darkness like a blade. Alara met it with her light, the two forces colliding in a storm of power that shook the walls of the throne room. Sparks of magic danced through the air, illuminating the intricate carvings on the floors and the golden banners that hung from the walls. For a moment, time seemed to slow. Kale's hand found hers, and their combined magic created a shield of light, so brilliant it forced the darkness to retreat. Alara's heart leapt, and in that instant she understood something essential. Power was not just magic, not just strength. It was courage, trust, and the willingness to face what was inside and outside of herself. The figure faltered, its shadows shrinking before the radiant energy of two hearts bound by destiny. Kale's eyes met hers, dark and intense, and she felt the pull she had first felt at the festival, the storm and warmth of it all. "We can do this," he whispered, and she nodded. Together, they released a surge of energy so strong that the shadows screamed, twisting and unraveling into nothingness. The hooded figure let out a final, chilling cry before dissolving completely, leaving only the echo of its presence and the lingering weight of the curse that had once threatened them. Alara sank to her knees, exhausted, her chest heaving with relief and disbelief. Kale knelt beside her, brushing a damp strand of hair from her face. "You did it," he said softly, pride and something deeper shining in his eyes. "You saved the kingdom." She looked up at him, tears glistening in her eyes. We saved it," she corrected, her voice trembling. The weight of their shared effort, their combined courage, and the bond between them was undeniable. Kale's gaze softened and he reached out, taking her hands in his. The warmth of his touch was grounding, familiar, and yet electric. "Alara," he said, his voice low, "you have grown stronger than I ever imagined. Not just in power, but in heart. You are remarkable. And I—" her heart skipped a beat as she met his gaze. The storm between them, the tension, the longing that had grown since the festival, had reached a point where it could no longer be denied. She did not have to understand it fully, did not have to have words ready. She simply leaned forward, closing the distance between them, and pressed her lips to his. The kiss was tender, yet it carried the weight of everything they had faced: fear, trust, danger, and desire. Time seemed to stop. In that moment, they were no longer king and student, ruler and descendant, protector and protected. They were two hearts bound by destiny, two souls who had found each other in the storm of a kingdom on the edge of darkness. When they finally parted, Kale rested his forehead against hers. "We have much to rebuild," he said quietly, his hand still holding hers. "The kingdom, our lives, the trust of our people. But for now, we can breathe. Together." Alara nodded, her own heart still racing. "Together," she echoed. The city outside began to stir again. Lanterns flickered in the distance, merchants prepared their stalls, and the people of Urindor went about their lives, unaware of the battle that had raged within the shadows of the throne room. But Alara and Kale knew. They had faced the darkness, survived the curse, and emerged stronger. The bond forged between them was a promise that no shadow could break. Days passed and the kingdom slowly healed. Alara continued to train, mastering her magic, learning to wield her power not only for defense but for protection, guidance, and hope. Kale remained by her side, teaching, guiding, and sometimes silently, watching her with a mix of pride and something tender he could not yet fully name. The festival kiss, once a fleeting moment of fate, had become a symbol of everything they had fought for. Their connection deepened not just in romance, but in trust, respect, and shared destiny. And though the shadows had been vanquished, Alara understood that vigilance, courage, and love would always be needed to protect what they had saved. One evening, they stood atop the highest tower of the fortress, watching the sun set over the kingdom. The sky was painted in hues of gold and crimson, reflecting the strength and beauty of the land they had fought to protect. Kale's hand found hers again, fingers intertwining with the same natural ease that had begun at the festival, strengthened now by trials, shared victories, and unspoken understanding. "Alara," Kale said softly, "the kingdom is safe for now. But what we have, this bond, it is permanent, and I will protect it as I will protect you for as long as I live." Her heart soared, a mix of relief, joy, and the deep connection that had grown between them. "And I will stand with you," she replied. "Always." As the last rays of the sun disappeared behind the horizon, the city below glowed softly in the twilight. Lanterns floated gently along the streets, as if celebrating the dawn of a new era. Together, Alara and Kale turned to face the future, not as a king and a stranger, not as teacher and student, but as equals, partners, and hearts bound by fate, courage, and love. And somewhere deep within the fortress, in the shadows of the throne room, a faint pulse of magic remained, a reminder that destiny had been fulfilled, and that though darkness could rise again, the bond between them would always shine brighter.